All right, good afternoon, everybody. I am Assistant Chief Leslie Parsons of our Homeland Security Bureau for the Metropolitan Police Department. And I'm here today because last Thursday, MPD officers were involved in a fatal use of force. This was a fatal officer-involved shooting in the 2900 block of Gainesville Street, Southeast. Today, pursuant to the Comprehensive Policing and Justice Amendment Act of 2022, we are releasing a community briefing with the body-worn camera from the officers involved in the use of force. The incident remains under investigation by the Metropolitan Police Department's Force Investigation Team. The entire case, circumstances, and evidence will be independently reviewed by the United States Attorney's Office. I will provide a brief overview of the incident. On Thursday, October 19th, 2023, at approximately 4:52 p.m., the D.C. Office of Unified Communications received a 911 call for a person with a gun in the 2800 block of Gainesville Street, Southeast. The caller reported that there was an individual outside of the location armed with a gun and shouting at two other people. A description of the individual was given by the caller. Uniformed officers of the Metropolitan Police Department's 7th District responded to the scene, located the individual, and attempted to stop them. The individual fled, and the officers engaged in a foot pursuit. During the foot pursuit, involved Officer 1 broadcast the individual's description, location, and that the individual had a gun in their pocket. Involved Officer 1 then ordered the individual not to pull the gun out. Immediately following the command by involved Officer 1, the individual turned towards the officers and raised a semi-automatic handgun as rounds were discharged between involved Officer 1 and the individual. During the exchange of gunfire, a witness officer was struck and fell to the ground, and the individual fled between two buildings. Involved Officer 2 arrived as a backup officer, was on the other side of those two buildings when they saw the individual emerge and raise a handgun. Involved Officer 2 discharged their service pistol at the individual several times, striking the individual who fell to the ground. Once the scene was secure, other officers attempted to render medical aid to the individual until they were relieved by paramedics from D.C. Fire and Emergency Medical Services. The individual was transported to an area hospital where they were pronounced dead. The individual's handgun was recovered on the scene. The witness officer who was struck by gunfire was also transported and treated at a local hospital. That officer has been released from the hospital and was actually released on Friday and is recovering at home. The MPD members involved have been placed on administrative leave pursuant to MPD policy. We have posted the videos to our community briefing page on MPD's website. At this time, I'm going to transition to another topic I want to talk about. I'm going to ask my colleagues from the United States Marshals Service to join me up at the podium. Making their way up is Marshal Dixon. He is the Marshal for the District of Columbia, as well as Commander Don Snyder from the United States Marshals Service. And I want to talk about a wanted escapee that has been captured. On September 6th, the U.S. Marshals Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force apprehended 30-year-old Christopher Haynes in Manassas, Virginia, pursuant to a D.C. Superior Court arrest warrant for murder. Haynes waived his right to an extradition at that time and was brought to our homicide branch to be booked and processed. Later that day, approximately 2:30 p.m., Haynes complained of ankle pain from a pre-existing injury as he was being processed. At 3 o'clock, he was transported by a 1st District officer to the George Washington University Hospital for treatment. A 2nd officer was also assigned to the detail and responded. At approximately 3:38 p.m., while an officer was changing out Haynes' handcuffs, Haynes physically assaulted the officer and fled from the hospital with one handcuff still attached to his right wrist. Both officers chased after Haynes, but were unable to catch him. The officers at the hospital called for assistance, prompting a multi-agency response to search for the escaped suspect. MPD searched a large area around the hospital and received numerous possible sightings of Haynes. The Metropolitan Police Department continued to work closely with our local and federal partners to apprehend Haynes. And I'm pleased to announce that earlier today, 30-year-old Christopher Haynes was placed under arrest by the United States Marshals Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force in Oxon Hill, Maryland. He has been returned to the homicide branch, where in addition to the original murder charge, he is also being charged with escape. I'd like to thank our partners at the United States Marshals Service, as well as the many, many community members that stepped up, that called us, provided information to the Marshals Service that led to Haynes' arrest. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Marshal Dixon for a few remarks from the U.S. Marshal Service.
Dixon, D-I-X-O-N. Thank you, Chief Parsons. Robert. As Chief Parsons mentioned today, the U.S. Marshals Capital Area Fugitive Task Force recaptured fugitive Christopher Patrick Haynes. Haynes had escaped, as noted, from MPD custody on September the 6th while being taken care of at the George Washington University Hospital for an alleged ankle injury. He was taken into custody today without incident at approximately 10:30 a.m. off of Iverson Street in Oxon Hill, Maryland, Prince George's County. The Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force focuses on resources and efforts on the enhancement of public safety and in the reduction of violence within the National Capital Region through the identification, investigation, and apprehension of fugitives wanted for egregious crimes against the community, while ensuring the equal application of justice, integrity, and service for all. The United States Marshals Service is the federal government's primary agency for fugitive investigations, and the Marshals have the broadest arrest authority among federal law enforcement agencies. The U.S. Marshals Service and our task forces provide assistance to state and local agencies in apprehending and locating their most violent fugitives. We do this by capitalizing on the expertise of federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to locate and arrest such individuals. I want to commend the United States Marshals Service's Capital Area Fugitive Task Force, Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force, and our federal and local law enforcement partners, especially the Metropolitan Police Department led by Chief Pamela Smith, for their support. Additionally, but no less significantly, I want to thank anyone in the civilian population who provided assistance in this effort. Your value cannot be overstated, and I implore you to continue that assistance in helping us protect you. Thank you.
Take up on topic questions for and then we'll transition to body one.
Can we talk about the circumstances of how he was captured? Was he family in Prince George's County? How did that transpire?
So we have Commander Don Snyder, who's the commander of the Cardiff Task Force, the Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force. I have difficulty saying that, don't I? And I'm going to defer to him for any detailed questions.
So I'm not going to get into the details of how what led us to Oxon Hill, but what I will say is through extensive investigations by members of the Cardiff, which is the Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force, is 100 agencies throughout Maryland, D.C., and Virginia, all working to locate and arrest violent fugitives. And we have a significant partnership with the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C., and together, through our investigative efforts, we were able to locate a place where we believed that Haynes was hiding, and we executed the arrest this morning. So.
Is anyone found to be helping him, and will anyone else face charges in this?
We can't really comment on that right now. Thank you. He's been taking actions to conceal his location, yes. So he was hiding from us.
Is it believed that he's been at that location for the past month and a half?
I really can't get into that. Sorry.
Can you talk about what took so long to capture him? I mean, as you said, Marshall, he's been on the run since September 6th after escaping from GW. What took so long?
Yeah, so we had basically had to reestablish the investigation from the start, because we had arrested him earlier that morning. And like I said, he was taking evasive actions to avoid capture.
Yes.
Marshall, how troubled were you about the escape in the first place? About how he escaped, the circumstances of his escape?
Well, any escape is troubling, because we arrest them for a reason, right? They have done something that calls for their arrest. So we are always concerned about escapes. However, we're also very confident through our partnerships and through our own perseverance and our capabilities, those talents that we have in the organization, that we will stay on the hunt and we will ultimately locate our objectives or our targets. And that's, so we were confident we would ultimately find him. It was just a matter of time, but we were relentless in our pursuit, as you can see.
Was anybody else arrested along with him? Anyone who might have been helping him or?
No.
Can you give anything else on how exactly you found him? Was it tips from the public? Was it your own internal investigation? And then I have one question for
So I'm not going to go into the details about how we found him, because I don't want to jeopardize them for future purposes. But I will say that we continuously implore and ask for the participation of anyone in the community, certainly our law enforcement partners, but the civilian population plays a really relevant part and role in helping us to identify people who would otherwise put them at risk. These people are not their friends. They may be family members, and they may be sentimental to them. However, the crimes that they have committed, the acts that they have perpetrated, only put the law-abiding citizen at risk, and we are doing our level-headed best to prevent that from happening.
Do you feel more comfortable having him in Marshal custody, or does he have to go to MPD custody at this point, given the circumstances of the escape?
We have no reservation about the services or the efforts of our colleagues in MPD. We are confident that they can do what they need to do as we do what we do.
Chief Parsons, my memory is last time we talked about this, there was some investigation into whether the officers who responded to the hospital handled his transfer to a bed properly. Can you update us on the status of that investigation?
Yeah, so that investigation is still ongoing. There was an administrative investigation initiated to see if they followed proper protocols, and I can tell you that that investigation is still underway. Yeah. Thank you, Marshals.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Then. Yes, ma'am.
Chief, so we're hearing from the man killed, his father says that he wants all of the body camera video released. He does not believe that that video shows his son firing at police and firing police first. What's your message to the community about that?
It's really hard to hear you. Can we repeat that again? I'm sorry.
The man who was killed in this
Yes.
is 33-year-old Arthur Porter. His father saw the video yesterday, and he's calling for all of the body cam video to be released. He does not believe that it shows his son with a gun raised firing at police and firing at police first. Can you please speak to what is your message to the community about this?
No, I mean, my message to the community is the same thing I've said before. Any loss of life in our communities is tragic, not only for the family, but for the entire community. And I definitely give my condolence to the family. I do know that representatives from our Department of Behavioral Health were able to speak with the family and discuss the video that we released with their consent. I'm not familiar with any other comments from the family. That's something I would have to follow up on, because that's the first time I'm hearing that standing here.
What are your thoughts, Chief, on if you think that this was an appropriate use of force? Do you believe that this was an appropriate use of force?
It wouldn't be a good position for me to speculate on that. Our internal affairs division, our force investigations team, they'll conduct a thorough investigation into our officers' response, their actions, and the use of force itself. That'll be done in conjunction with the United States Attorney's Office, who will review every aspect of the case and decide how we proceed moving forward. So, I mean, the long answer to your question is what I just gave you, but I don't think it's proper to speculate on what the response was.
And these officers are on leave.
These officers are on administrative leave pursuant to our policy, yes.
Can you talk to who fired first, and when it comes to this exchange that we talked about, can you talk to about who fired first?
That's what the investigation will reveal. As I just said, it'd be tough for me to try to speculate in watching a video and trying to figure that out. We have some really good force investigators, as well as our partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they will make those determinations.
Chief, you mentioned this in your comments, but could you elaborate on Do you believe that the man who ended up dying did in fact pull out a gun and fire shots? If you could just talk about that.
Yeah, so I really, again, that comes back to the speculation part. I think that we have to let the investigation play out and let the investigation reveal exactly what happened. And that's why we do investigations. That's why it's not just myself or anyone else on the Metropolitan Police Department that makes those decisions. We don't make those decisions in a bubble. We don't take these situations lightly. We have an entire force investigations team, and we make those decisions, and those investigations are in consultation with the United States Attorney's Office, and that's exactly what we'll do in this case.
Chief, can you tell us what your investigation is preliminarily told you about who actually shot the officer who was struck, and where in that officer's body was he struck?
Yeah, so I don't have, to answer the first part, I don't have a preliminary answer on that. You know, as we've discussed before, we have to let the investigation determine exactly what transpired. Our officer was struck in a non-critical area in the side, more towards the midline to the back area.
So, when we're looking at the video, when you tell us that he was shot in that area, it appears that that would have come from the officer. That would have been friendly fire.
Yeah, I don't think you can speculate about friendly fire at this point. I think you have to let the investigation do exactly what investigations do and determine exactly what happened.
And can you tell us, you have confirmed that the suspect's gun was operable and loaded with live ammunition, that he discharged live, I mean, because you said there was an exchange, at least at site number 2. Is that correct?
Correct. There was an exchange, and you know, when you see the video, you will see the involved individual's weapon that was recovered with the slide lock to the rear, which is indicative of a gun that has been fired until it ran out of ammunition.
Well, so that brings me to mind. Could it have run out of ammunition before the encounter with Officer 2 at location 4?
That's what the investigation will figure out. That isn't something I can answer standing here in front of you today.
That brought you there, was that gun used? Was that gun used on the other people? Was it brandished, I guess, during the encounter?
So as I said when I opened up, the initial call for service was for a man with a gun who was arguing with 2 other folks. The investigation will determine whether the gun was used in that encounter too, because our force investigation team will investigate the sequence of events in its entirety.
Is the bullet out of the officer?
I wouldn't comment on that out of respect for the officer as well as privacy laws. I wouldn't comment.
Can you just update us on his condition, expectation of recovery?
Yeah, so our officer is doing well. As I said, was released from the hospital and is at home recovering.
And expects to make a full recovery?
It appears so at this point, yes.
With regard to evidence, can you confirm all of the ballistic evidence, the bullets from the guns, were recovered for investigation?
I can confirm that ballistic evidence was recovered from the scene, but I don't know what you mean by all the bullets. I can say ballistic evidence was recovered from the scene, but beyond that, I can't comment anymore.
All the shells from shots fired?
We recovered multiple casings at the scene.
And then all of the bullets possibly found?
I don't have a list of evidence, and I wouldn't drill down that deep, and I wouldn't talk about the evidence. As I said, this is a case still under investigation.
Can you talk about the experience of the officers involved in the issue?
Yeah, you know, those the officers, their experience level and their time on the department, that's stuff that we can provide to you. I don't have that sitting in front of me. I wouldn't want to give you the wrong information, and I wouldn't want to speculate. We do have varying levels of varying levels of experience represented in our officers that were involved in this event. So that's something we can follow up with you and get that to you.
Can you talk, Chief, about just what your officers encounter on a daily basis in the city?
No, I mean when you watch the video, you'll see these officers. They're doing exactly what we want them to do. They're out in community. They're being visible. They're being present. And they're running towards danger. I mean, these officers every day, I mean, you have the sounds of gunshots and you see officers running towards that. That's what makes the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department some of the greatest in the world. They're dedicated to the job. They're motivated to protecting the public. And you see them running towards danger every single day.
general, when there's training, I have to imagine this is a situation you train for, you know, two officers approaching a suspect who flees and there's an exchange of gunfire. Is there training about staying parallel to one another, not getting in the other person's line of sight or line of fire? Is that something you guys train on?
Yeah, so I mean, we have our own Metropolitan Police Academy, which I'm sure you're aware. We go through multiple scenarios. There's quite a bit of training, especially when it comes down to use of force. I think it's hard to train for every exact circumstance and situation. Part of our investigation will be looking at that tactical analysis and looking at the tactics used by the officer. And that'll be done as a result of the investigation. It's not something I could speculate on.
Just for the public, just, if you could just explain the question as to why, with the Park Police involved shooting, multiple cameras of officers who did not fire were released, but why in this case we're only seeing the body cameras of two officers who did fire, not the officer who was injured but did not fire.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the release of the Park Police video. That might be something we can follow up with you offline. All right, thank you.